Hey YouTube, this is Ticking Clock here. I've been getting some questions involving whether or not the current prime meridian is arbitrary or whether or not it was purposefully placed. And I just wanted to clear up some issues. I figured I'd just make a video describing what I've found and why I believe that it has been purposefully placed and it's not arbitrary. Um, my first set of evidence, or my first examples of this, are the facts that when we look at our current prime meridian and how it intersects our pyramid and our Tropic of Cancer, we see that it has a very precise intersection point. And something I haven't talked about in my other videos is that when we spin the Earth around, we also have a precise intersection point with the Tropic of Capricorn and the anti-meridian. This is not an accident. These lines are based off of ancient sites. They're based off of an ancient global culture that was able to determine latitude and longitude extremely accurately. They knew the Earth was round. They had an extremely sound understanding of our sun. And this is something that did not exist during the, you know, development of our current culture. This is something that has been relearned. This was something that was forgotten or covered up. So when we look at this, it definitely indicates some sort of solar connection. And when I drew my middle line, I realized what it represented, and that is, I recently realized what it represented, and I believe it to be the ecliptic. And the ecliptic is basically just the solar plane of our solar system, which all the planets and the asteroid belt all rotate around. The Kuiper belt, they all rotate around the sun on this ecliptic line. And so while the Earth will rotate on the equator, it will be in line with the ecliptic. So if this were the ecliptic plane here, our Earth would rotate at this angle. Okay? So that's how the Earth would rotate in this direction. And when we look at the ecliptic here, what we'll see is that this line is based off of the current solar calendar, or the solar calendar is currently based off of this. And so this middle line is represented here at Mount Hikurangi in New Zealand, the place where we see first solar light on land of the year. So on January 1st, this is the first area location of solar light besides Antarctica, which is going to be receiving 24 hours of light. This is going to be the first light on land. So when we look at the lines, we see that there's definitely a purpose to them. And now, someone just recently sent me a message saying that the prime meridian is just arbitrary. But when we look at this, we see how this cuts our ecliptic line perpendicularly, perfectly. Okay? And the person who was asking me, or basically telling me that Karl Marx's The Code describes how the former prime meridian was in Egypt. And it may have been, but it didn't have anything to do with this current layout. Because when we look at this layout, it's based off of solar movements. And when we look at the Egyptian, we'll call it the Cairo meridian, if we were to look at that, it does not hit our ecliptic line in a perpendicular fashion. It actually is an oblique angle here. Whereas here, we have a perpendicular line. And so this just tells me that this is not, it's just not correct. And that is why they've moved the meridian here. Now, when we look at my one video, which has caused a lot of controversy, is the proof of pole shift video, which, now with my research having gone as far as it has taken on a different meaning to me. I use it mainly just to grab people's interests, whereas I don't necessarily think it's correct. I think this is all based off of an ecliptic formation at this point. And when I saw the documentary on the 77th parallel, I noticed at that point, at the 77th parallel at Washington, D.C., there it is, at Washington, D.C., when you look at the 77th, their 77th meridian, their sacred meridian, and you draw it out as just a typical longitudinal line, it doesn't really have much meaning. But when we look at it in relativity to the ecliptic, when we look at it in that fashion, what we see here is a point that is represented at the widest point between the two lines of our pyramid. This is the widest point. And so what I thought, wow, that's odd that Washington, D.C. is laid down at that point. And so what I did was I drew a perpendicular line that cut through Washington, D.C. And I think this is the true meaning of the 77th parallel. And when we follow the line, it comes up to our anti-meridian, and it intersects our anti-meridian right at a point where we have a spiraled bit of crust. So I do think that there's some sort of connection between the ecliptic and the way the Earth rotates around the Sun and the current geological formations of our Earth. And, if you look at the Moon or Mars, what they've done is they've selected meridian sites based off of interesting craters or just interesting sites, and that's where they decided to put their meridian lines. And you could say, yeah, that's arbitrary, but it is based off of something. And to say that ours is completely arbitrary, I don't believe that's true. I think it's based off of something. And when we look at these lines, we see, just interesting, extremely interesting areas that come extremely close to coastlines. I mean, this just does not look like it's coincidence here. And you see just minimal areas of land, and it's just almost as if land avoids the lines at times. We have just a minimal amount of land touching our particular ecliptic. And we have very interesting intersection with the Galapagos Islands here, which cut through the equator and the ecliptic. And we have New Zealand, which cuts through. And then it just seems real nicely packed in here. If you've seen my other video, global geographical conspiracy, I talk about Indonesia being the former Atlantis, and we just see, how you would have all this former land here during the Ice Age, and it's now submerged, but it just seems very nicely, nice and tidy, right there, packed right in the lines. Even New Guinea is almost point to point within the line formation. And we have our ecliptic just barely touch the tip of India, and we have some interesting observations in the Mediterranean here. We have Crete, and we have it just barely touch Tunisia, and parallel with the coast of Spain here, and Sicily here. So you just have a lot of interesting coincidences, I guess we could say, that really deserve more attention than they're getting. Perhaps they're not getting them because this is well understood by certain individuals, and they don't want mainstream science to have a grasp on these particular phenomena. It may have something to do with hollow earth theory and expanding earth theory, where hollow earth theory, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but we don't have, true photographs of our North Pole. They're not made out to the public, and there's many different stories that have come from the North Pole, or polar explorers. Ancient maps show interesting anomalies with our current, satellite observations, and you have islands that disappear that they deny about. There's an interesting documentary. It's called the Algeria Map Collection, which I recommend everyone watching this go find and watch when they have some time, because that is a very enlightening documentary. But you also have, if hollow earth theory is true, you have another theory called expanding earth theory, where everyone knows that our continents were connected at one point. You can see the connection between South America and Africa. It's very obvious. But the one connection no one seems to make is that we also see connections with the west coast of the Americas with the east coast of Asia. And that is a idea that has been destroyed by mainstream science. And basically, the idea is that our Earth has been growing since its inception, and the oceans have been filling them in. It's a very interesting idea. When we think about continents just moving by themselves independently of the rest of the Earth, it doesn't really make much sense. It doesn't. When we think of the Earth expanding on its own, whether or not it's due to centripetal force of the Earth expanding and hollowing out as it expands, creating the hollow Earth, or some people believe that there is some sort of matter creation, happening at the center of the Earth. Both ideas, I think, seem plausible. you know, the latter, defies modern physics, which in my mind has lost credibility. Mainstream science is a joke, and I say this all the time to people, but Nikola Tesla was on the verge of giving us free energy, pulling energy down from the ionosphere and transferring it to everyone for free. He was shut down by J.P. Morgan, and I believe that to this day we see a conspiracy to keep science out of the realm of possibility of giving us free energy. Because if that were ever to happen, they would lose control. They would lose control of us. That's the last thing they want. So science is not credible for the main reason that they are professional scientists. And who pays them? The universities pay them. Where do they get their money? They get their money from elitist funds. Okay? Those are the people giving the university money and deciding what they do with that money. Science is not free. Archaeology is not free. And that is why I have to make these videos and show you the true nature of our reality and show you that there is something more to our history than going back 5,000-6,000 years to a time when they say that man first walked on earth, when the Bible says man first walked on earth. Okay, it all comes back to religion, and religion wants control. We saw it with the Catholic Church and the Inquisitions, and it's never going to stop unless they are exposed. And that is why I'm making this video. We deserve, the people on this planet are all intelligent human beings, and we can all know what is the better good for the planet and the earth if we are given the opportunity. But we live in a realm of lies and hidden with a fantasy fairy tale religion, and it creates mass confusion, and that is what they want. That is how they control. And unless we expose them and bring out the truth, we will never live the lives we were meant to live. And there will always be chaos. It has to stop. And this is how we do it. This is how we expose them. You expose them by showing people facts. And we need to find and uncover the origins of civilization, which are here. The Yonaguni Monument must be acknowledged by mainstream archaeology and say, yes, this was above water, was built by man 10,000 years ago. I guess we're wrong. I guess man was here. I guess all the religions are false. And until we do that, we're not going to be free. But it's not going to happen unless people start speaking up. And that's why I'm making these videos. I want to start a revolution. I want people to get upset. I want people to demand changes, and this is the only way I know how to start it. And I think everyone watching this video who believes in what I'm saying, we need to speak out. We need to take this video, take all my videos, download them, rename them, put them back up on the internet, We need as many people to see these as possible, and then when they don't believe it, you show them the facts. You can't argue with facts, and that's what I do over and over again, is I just look for facts. And you can't argue with it. You can't. You just got to get people to look. So, okay, I've rambled on enough, and I hope this video explains better some of the loose ends I had left from my previous videos, and I just want us all to figure this out. I want this world to be a better place. All right, guys, take care.